Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our third episode of Transformation Talks. I am Yasmin Taj, editor and head of branded content for ETHR International, and it is my pleasure to be amongst all of you once again. I'm here to host another HR tech influencer as part of the series today. To those who are new to Transformation Talks, as part of this LinkedIn Live series, every week I host different talent leaders and HR tech influencers to share their experiences and transformation stories of talent, technology, and organizations. And today I have a very special guest. He's a very well known author, leader, and one of the top most award winning HR tech influencers in Asia. You must have read his book, The Remuneration Handbook, or Human Capital Global Business Strategy, or Fundamentals of HR Analytics. He brings 3 decades of vast HR business and consulting experience. He is Deputy CEO and Group Director of Sector Capability and Transformation Group for the National Council of Social Service. To those who follow him closely, he is also one of the first Singaporeans to complete a half marathon at the Polar Circle. And I'm very delighted to present to you Fermin Diez on the screen. Welcome, Fermin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me
Great.
today. Yes.
Absolutely. So, Fermin, I do have a couple of questions prepared already for our series. But before that, I'm personally very curious to know, and our audience must be curious to know as well about your polar marathon experience. Tell us about it. How was the experience? What kind of preparation was required, and what really motivated you to do so?
Um, okay, the motivation is simple. It's trying to push beyond your normal boundaries and just try to see how far you can go. So the Greenland trip was planned at the tail end of a holiday, and we were literally just looking for somewhere unusual to go. And it turned out that they had a marathon and a half marathon running at the same time. So decided to go and do that. How was it? Well, it was very different. Of course, I live in Singapore, and there is nothing more polar opposite, and I mean the pun, than Greenland. Greenland is a very vast and desolate place. It is the largest island in the world, and yet only has 55,000 people. 55,000 people is what we would have here in one estate, let alone an entire island. Um, it was very cold. When the race started, it was 15 below 0 Celsius. The wind was blowing the flags literally at 90-degree angles. And it was something I'd never experienced before. You run on the ice itself, on the ice cap. So you have to run with spikes. You also have to run, of course, with several layers of clothing that you have to be able to monitor with zippers to regulate your own temperature. Because even though it starts super cold and is really hard to breathe when you start,
Yes.
eventually you will warm up, and so you need to find ways to regulate your body temperature.
Mm.
It was an amazing race. It was beautiful beyond belief. I saw caribou, I saw musk ox, uh, and just running on the ice, which is it was quite amazing.
Wow.
Watching the sunrise over the ice caps. Yeah,
Beautiful. Sounds surreal to us. I think you need a lot of courage and willpower to do that. And I think you've done a great job. So great to know that. Thanks, Fermin, for sharing that.
sure.
Okay. And before I start the discussion with Fermin, I would request our viewers today to keep sharing your thoughts and comments and questions in the comments section. I will keep taking them up during our conversation. And without any further delay, let me start with my first question for you, Fermin. The technological dependency of organizations is only increasing as the advent of big data and analytics continues to shift paradigms in the world of HR. How are HR objectives changing with respect to further digital transformation?
I think what the advent of analytics has brought is a means to really show how HR adds value. I mean, there are simple ways that analytics can be used, like how to determine the ROI of training, or how to figure out the best way or the best channel for recruiting, the one that would yield better candidates. But truly, analytics is here to help us show to the business how HR adds value, how through HR policy and HR practices, the HR function can bring higher productivity of labor and therefore better revenue generation or better profit achievement. And that I think is really at the heart of analytics. If I had a dream, my dream would be that analytics would basically work on business questions that are answered with HR variables. And to me, that's the crux of getting analytics right.
That's a very interesting thought. As you said, if you could actually use analytics to answer business questions with HR variables, and how this will actually impact not just the HR function, but the business, the revenue generation, the entire organization as a whole. So that's where analytics will stand in the future, I'm sure. So thanks for sharing that, Fermin.
Yeah.
So, Fermin, future proofing for organizations has become an imperative business objective in a world full of unprecedented disruptions. With your prolific experience in HR analytics, which technologies and innovations, according to you, are helping or have helped secure the futures of business transformation?
I think there are a lot of new tools coming up, and it's really interesting to see the impetus that HR tech has had of late. I think the first systems were really about better management of HR information, and you still see the big names such as Workday and so forth are really about that. How do we capture all of the data? How do we put it on in one place, and how do we make it more manageable? However, there are many things that apps are helping us to do, from better understanding of recruiting profiles, better understanding of how different assessment tools can yield better outcomes in terms of training. I mean, in terms of recruiting, or better management of the training information. I think there are several of these tools that are quite useful. However, I've had a comment that I've said to several people in the past, which is that of all the HR functions, interestingly enough, the one that you would think is least numeric is training. And yet they have a vast advantage on trying to figure out, from an analytics standpoint, what are the right training programs and who should be trained and how often and for how long and whatnot. And they have been better able to figure out the ROI of training. And so there's a lot of analytics behind that. Another function that you wouldn't think is particularly numerical is recruiting. And yet recruiting probably has advanced the most in terms of analytics, to provide tools that can help figure out the right profile and the right sourcing. And yet the one that is probably the most numerical, which is compensation, I think has had the least advance in terms of analytics. I've seen some interesting things. There's software, for instance, that helps determine what's called utility curves. Basically, is the choice that people make in terms of benefits, what type of flex is best to offer, and how to structure your flex so that you can get a higher perceived value for the spend that you're doing on your benefit programs. But another one that I have seen recently and I'm quite excited about is about flex pay. FlexPay, I think, is the next frontier in compensation. It has to do with the fact that the same logic that applies to flex benefits applies to flex pay. Not everybody wants to be paid the same way. Some people really are motivated by money. Other people, not as much. For some people, or for some companies, attracting and retaining is far more important. So particularly during these times, you want to be able to attract the right talent, make sure they stay as long as possible. So this idea of flex pay, I think, is one that is coming to stay for the future of work, and to be able to accommodate gig and project employees and full-time and part-time and whatnot. So the latest I've seen is this flex pay technology. There's one in particular that I'm quite excited about, called UFlex Reward. The other one that I'm quite excited about is the use that people can make of their engagement scores to tie them to business outcomes. And I'm finding that people like Engage Rocket are making good advances in that direction.
Great, thanks, Fermin. Those some of those examples that you shared, I think, are going to be very helpful for our audience today because these are the kind of the apps and technologies which will kind of determine what the future would be and how analytics can be used in every function that the HR department uses. So, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Great. So, moving on to our third question, it is what do you think is the role of automation and digitization in furthering HR goals to define the future of work, Fermin?
I think there are two big goals that need to come out of automation, and I would put them in two broad categories. One is the category of providing better answers to senior management. Senior management isn't usually interested in speed of recruiting or turnover rate or engagement score. What they're really interested in is how does this help me beat my competition? How does this help me improve my growth rate? How does this help me uh, up my customer satisfaction and stickiness of customers? How does this help improve profitability? So the typical business person isn't thinking the way an HR person thinks about turnover and engagement as the answer that we're trying to provide. They're thinking, how is it that lowering turnover or how is it that increasing engagement helps answer the business questions? So I think one part of the goals that we should have in HR is related to how do we answer business questions. So we talked earlier about HR productivity or labor productivity. I think analytics will make us eventually land in the position where HR productivity is the province of HR, and that we are here to figure out what are the right policies and programs that we should implement to increase productivity from a revenue standpoint, from a profitability standpoint, or from a customer satisfaction standpoint. The second one has to do with better service to employees. So that broad category is about how do we deliver to our staff the kinds of things that they need as quickly as possible. So one of the things that analytics and automation can help us do in digitalization is how to, if you think about it, not too long ago, I mean, I remember it, maybe some of you are young enough that you don't, but you used to have to go to the bank to get banking services. You had to go cash a check. You had to make a deposit. You had to make a withdrawal. There were not even ATMs. ATMs was already the first sort of step in digitization. And I remember it because when digitization first started, the folks that were running banks, particularly the folks running bank branches, were adamant that digitization would never work because this is a people business. The reason I have clients is because I treat them so well. They come to my branch because of the service we provide. In HR, we are still in exactly that mode. Oh, we need to provide personalized service. We need to have high touch. I bet none of you listening to this goes to a bank branch at all to do anything other than to open the account for the first time and sign the papers for the first time. And you're still thinking, why is it that I have to be here? Why can't I do this online? And you do all of your banking through your phone. And you, in fact, think that the best bank is the one that has the best online services. But we refuse to accept the same is going to be true of the HR department. That, I think, is the next other big step that we need to take. One is about answering business questions and making HR productivity the core of what we're here in HR. And the second is how do we improve the level of staff satisfaction with HR services by digitalizing?
Very interesting thought, Fermin. That actually makes me think that will the role of HR change, very drastically if everything gets, in the end everything becomes digitized, and what role will HR play then if the high touch goes away from it?
There's still a lot of high touch involved in banking. It's just reserved for the points that where it's actually needed. to solve
Exactly.
problems, to address new issues, to sell you on new schemes, to there's a lot of touch that still gets involved. There's a lot of trust that still needs to be built. And in fact, building trust without the personal touch is very hard to do. However, many banks still do it because they rely on the quality of the service. We need to get to that same mindset.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Great thoughts there, I think, Fermin. I do believe that the role of HR in terms of automatization, digitization, and as you said, being the province of productivity in an organization, these are going to be very important going forward. So thanks for sharing that. Moving on, Fermin, my next question to you would be with your vast experience in global business strategy, you must have observed many transformations across businesses in the last decade. Digital transformation was a business objective for many organizations even before the pandemic. So, how do you think the impact of digital transformation has accelerated business outcomes?
Well, I think it's no secret that the pandemic has made digital necessary. You talked earlier about, we lose the touch, and what happens if we lose the touch? I am never advocating to lose the touch, but we had to learn during these 2 years almost that we've been at this, that the touch has to happen through means other than personal touch. So we have had to provide um, digital platforms and better tools to engage and better tools to do the work that we continue to do. So I think it has made our HR job both more exciting because it's a new frontier that we're all trying to figure out how to work, and the future of work is no longer in the future; it has arrived, and at the same time, it's also made our jobs a lot harder. The more analytics there are, the harder it is to hide. And I'm very adamant about this. The more data we use to evaluate how we are doing our work, the more transparent we have to become. There is no longer a place where we can talk about, well, it was the economy or it was some other reason why things didn't work out. The more data driven we are, the more transparent we need to become. So that actually is quite a challenge for many HR professionals that we have to achieve that. There's another question that has been very difficult to answer is how do you build culture in this new environment? We are always used to building culture as team building events, but now team building has become more difficult. And now the future work, which is already here, has made it that we need part-time workers and gig workers and full-time workers. And is there a hierarchy? The full-time are better than the part-time, or is everybody the same? I find it fascinating. Companies like Grab, which is now the largest listed company in Asia, or in Southeast Asia at least, how interesting it is that they, from the point of view of the customer, which is the person receiving the delivery or hiring a car or whatever, the person that they interact with, it's not a Grab employee. It's a Grab contractor. But from a Grab point of view, they know that the moment of truth is between this person who is a contractor that works part-time or is a gig employee and the actual customer. So the culture is actually even greater, if you think about it, at that point than it is at the full-time staff that actually sits in the office that nobody ever gets to see. So it's quite fascinating, I think, cases like that of companies that have to think totally about how to do that. Then there's a whole other question about how to pay. How to pay has become a very interesting dilemma as well. Do you just pay part-time workers proportionally to what full-time workers make? Or is there a different way to calculate this? And how do you pay? What happens if you're hiring a gig employee who is in Bangladesh, but you're a Singaporean company? Do you pay them Singaporean salaries or Bangladeshi salaries or something in between? And when you're hiring that Bangladeshi gig worker, is that person, is their market Bangladesh? Is their market Singapore? Is there a global market? Because anybody can hire that person. So interesting. And then you're hiring people for their skills. We have no way to price skills. There are no data out there that you can buy reliably that tells you, if somebody is good at this type of cybersecurity, they are worth this much. It's basically a free market so far. So how do you figure this out? I think we're in very interesting territory there. Hybrid work also is going to create an entirely new and fascinating way to work. Many companies are trying to get there. How much should be at home and how much should be hybrid? And when you are doing the hybrid part, what kind of thing do you want to do hybrid? Do you leave it up to the employee to decide? Do you force it as a company to do? There are many interesting things that analytics can help us figure out that we haven't done yet. So this idea of culture and team building, what works, what doesn't work, I think analytics can also help us in that direction. So digital platforms that are continuous to improve. I was in one the other day. I really liked it because it's like a chat room. You can imagine that you are at the company at the whatever floor where we used to have our team building, and you could move around and have different conversations with different people all in the same space. And the app is designed in a way that you can only talk to the people who are basically with you on the same screen. But if you walk away from there and just amble on to wherever other people may be, like at the digital pantry, whereas these people were at the digital sort of living room, at the pantry, there are other people having another chat. And then you could sort of do it the same way that you would do it at work. So I think between digital platforms and analytics to help us understand what's working, that's where we need to head.
And that's going to be really interesting, as you said, figuring out how to create a culture digitally for people of different countries, different backgrounds. As you said, there'll be gig workers, contract workers, different countries, bringing it all together on a common, and making a common thread out of it. That's going to be the future. That'll be very interesting. And yes, technology and human touch will together play a role there. So that's a great point. Thanks for sharing that.
And we cannot escape it. All of us HR professionals, we have to go up this ramp of being analytical and digitally savvy today.
Yeah.
There is no waiting until some point in the future. It's already here.
Yeah, absolutely. Great thought. Thanks, Fermin.
Mhm.
So, Fermin, human capital strategies are becoming increasingly important to navigate our workplaces post the pandemic. HR analytics have helped escalate talent management and development, career planning, building teams, global HR, and various other HR practices. As we conclude this session, please share your thoughts on what the future looks like for a digitally oriented HR. You did tell us the future is already here, and there is no thinking that we have to do something, we have to do it today. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if I could summarize a bit of what we've been discussing so far, Yasmin, is probably three main thoughts. One, better decisions. How do we make data-driven decisions that will help us in HR demonstrate to the business leaders that we add value? And that value needs to be added in tangible, measurable, business strategic ways. So revenue, profit, customer satisfaction, these are the things that we need to show how what we do in HR does that. That then would lead us into better aligned, more impactful HR programs. How do we then redesign, if we need to, or at least confirm that whatever it is we are doing works to create culture, but also works to create revenue and profit. It works to create better engagement, lower turnover, but also to increase labor productivity. So how do we align our programs? And maybe these ideas of things, for instance, like flexible pay, need to be thoroughly analyzed, because truly, if our intent is to attract, retain, and motivate, and we think we have high turnover, we may not have to pay more. We should be thinking about paying differently. And I think this is one of those. See, in HR, we have a lot of things that this is the way it's always been done, and so we don't break away from it as much. I think that's the second thing that's going to happen. We need to start breaking old paradigms and find new ways of impacting the business from an HR point of view. And I think the third one is improve services to staff. how do we provide services where people are not expected to show up at the HR department to sign paperwork, or to how do we improve the way we communicate to everybody in the company, even though we can't really do physical town halls anymore. And how are we going to get, if we can't do the, football league after hour thing where we did the team building, how are we going to do it now? How is it going to work? So I think these are the key three areas that we need to focus on: better answers to the business, better HR programs, and better service to our employees.
Thanks, Fermin. That is very well summarized. I think yes, the HR function needs to look at these three very important aspects if they have to be prepared for the future, be future ready, and there can be multiple disruptions happening again. But if we focus on these these three aspects, I think that's going to set the path to a more successful future. So thanks for sharing that. And that was an amazing session, Fermin. But before we wrap up, I have a few rapid fire questions for you as well. So, shall we go ahead with that if you're okay?
Sure, good. Sure.
Great. All right. So, the first one is one word that defines the impact of digital transformation on HR.
Data-driven decisions.
Data driven decisions. Amazing. Great. Question two, three main areas HR must focus their strategy development on.
Three areas. Okay, workforce planning,
Okay.
culture, and rewards for the future of work.
Amazing. Workforce planning, culture, rewards for the future of work. Awesome. Thanks, Fermin. Third question for you. Top effective technologies and innovations that can help businesses in the future. You did point out a few of them. If you could just shoot out a few of more.
But I think if I were to think what's the top priority, it's not so much getting to the newest technology. I think the top priority, and I read this somewhere, that something like more than 90% of HR professionals believe that they don't have the tools to do any analytics. I think the number one priority is that we must become analytical. So the one thing that will help the profession more than anything else at this particular point in time is take a little bit of statistics, take a little bit of finance, take a little bit of basic tools. And I mean by basic, Excel, that does all your statistical analysis. Maybe if you want to get more sophisticated, Tableau, Power BI, something that helps you with dashboards. Number one priority for me is get everybody in the team to be numerical, to be analytical.
That's a great thought. I think, yes, if we become, I think we'll get a lot of answers from just becoming analytical in the way we function. So that's a great thought. On that note, thank you so much, Fermin. It was a great session. So much to learn from you. So much for, sharing all your experiences with our viewers today. I personally learned a lot. And my favorite takeaway from this is about being analytical, not only just, I think it's not just a lesson for the HR function, but all of us as individuals also. If we can know how to understand things better, we'll be able to make better decisions for the future. So thank you for that. Thank you so much. Any closing words from your side, Fermin?
Yasmin, thank you so much. It's always a joy to spend time with you. And to everybody that's listening, please take the time, if you haven't already, to learn a little bit about statistics, about finance, and about basic analytical tools. And I mean it, just be good at getting Excel under your belt. It will help you tremendously, and it will help the profession tremendously.
It will. It will. Thank you so much. On that note, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We will come back to you next week with yet another episode of the Transformation Talk series. And we'll be having Deborah Wollard, Group Chief People Officer from My Republic, joining us on Tuesday, the 21st of December at 11:30 a.m. Singapore time. So do block this time in your calendar for yet another powerful transformation talk. Till then, stay safe and keep transforming. See you next week. Thank you, Fermin, once again. Take care and bye-bye.